Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project with your host Mick Spears. We bring you thought-provoking guests and topics every week to challenge your thinking about leadership. Our aim is to help you become the leader that you wish you always had as we learn together and lead together. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project. I'm greatly honored today to be joined by a superstar. We are joined by Jeffrey Hayzlett. Jeffrey is a primetime television host of C-Suite with Jeffrey Hayzlett and an executive perspectives on C-Suite TV. He's also the host of the business podcast called All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett. And he's a well-known celebrity. He's a business celebrity. He's an internationally renowned public speaker, and he's the best-selling author of four books, including a book called Hero Factor, which is what I'm going to double down on today. But he's also written a book called Mirror Test, one called Running the Gauntlet, and a book called Think Big, Act Bigger. And we might pack into some of those as well because they also intrigue me. So really looking forward to today's discussion. We are blessed to have Jeffrey with us, an internationally renowned public speaker, the chairman of the C-Suite Network, where people go for their business news, for their business perspectives, and I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. So, Jeffrey, without any further ado, I'd love to hear from you. Tell us a little bit about your background and what led you to start the C-Suite Network in the first place.
Well, that's a big question, and I'll do my best to unpack it. You know, in my career, I bought and sold over 250 businesses in my career, $25 billion in transactions. I was a Fortune 100 officer managing a company of $187 billion. That's U.S. And then inside of that, when I say managing, leading sales to that, and then marketing with a $17 billion budget and 7,500 marketing people. And from that, went off and did television. And while I was doing television, I was a judge on Celebrity Apprentice for a number of years with Donald Trump back then, before he became president, before all this other craziness ensued. But so don't blame me for any of that you see in politics. But then I went on to do a show on Bloomberg called The C-Suite with Jeffrey Hayzlett. It was a number one business show, prime time, which I love because I own the show. And then while I was doing that, we said, well, geez, we're having this great experience with it. Why can't we build a community around it? And of which now we know, here we are 10 years later, we know that content drives community and community drives commerce. And so that's what led us to put together a very organized network. And now, of course, it's chaos with networks, as they always are. And we built this great community and great content and driving, a little bit of commerce from time to time with everybody doing business. And that's really how it got started.
So I love these 3 C's that you talk about. So content, community, and then this connection that you have with people. So tell us about this thirst for content that people have and what people would get from the C-Suite community if they were to join.
Well, a little education, some motivation, some inspiration, and also a pathway towards monetization. I mean, that's what you need. C-suite executives like to hang out with other C-suite executives. They like to be able to know that they're in good company. And that's one of the things that we provide. And whether you're on Main Street, in a small town like where I'm from, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, or on Wall Street, it's just zeros. And the same things that we do, in Carnegie, near where you're from, and the same things we do in Melbourne. It's just different zeros behind those numbers. And so that's what really we try to focus around in terms of helping people do that. So the content that they get is in 2 ways. One, a little, as I said, education, motivation, inspiration, but everybody's always about trying to build growth and hyper growth as much as possible. But the other thing you need to do is use content today. And that's the big thing. Like you're doing right now, you're a podcast host, but that content positions you as a great thought leader in the area of domain of which you're trying to be, that exact thought, so people can find you. And so, in the United States, there's a town named St. Louis, Missouri. And if you're a dry cleaner in St. Louis, Missouri, it's hard for people to find you unless they're driving by or word of mouth or something like that. The days of, you advertising in the yellow pages or doing direct mail or leaflets or gosh forbid you put an ad in the newspaper, those days are gone. And now we're in a digital world. And in a digital world, you have to either buy your own spot out there, which means claim your territory and defend it. I mean, even when I was the chief marketing officer of Eastman Kodak, one of the biggest, most iconic companies in the world. I was paying $20 million a year to Google to support and promote my own website, which was Kodak.com. We owned it. So today, if you're a dry cleaner, you have to be known as the doctor of spots. You have to tell people that you're an expert at what you do and how you do it. And, I can get blood stains out of, I can get grass stains out of this. I can do this. I'm a miracle worker with spots. And that's what content's playing a deeper and richer role in the way in which we position our companies every single day. Now, whether you're a thought leader, coach, an author, a speaker, a consultant, trainer, or whether you're a brand of any size, and a brand, of course, is nothing but a promise delivered. So whether you're a dry cleaner in St. Louis or you're a major conglomerate in Sydney, Australia, it doesn't make a difference. You've got to use content to drive your business, and that's what it's about.
So there's a few things I'm hearing there, Jeffrey. I'd love to play it back to you and see if I'm taking away the right thing. The first thing about the community that I'm picking up is that people are finding their tribe. They're finding people that have been through similar things to them before. They're finding potentially mentors. They're finding that kind of empathy amongst their peers of, finally I find people that are going through what I'm going through. And then this element of content. Well, the key here is no one can buy a product or service that they don't know about. And in a digital world, it's all about thought leadership and being able to stand out. So we're in a infinitely more connected world, but it also means that we're in a more flooded world. So in a more flooded world, you need to stand out, and how you stand out is through thought leading content. Is that what I'm taking away here? And that's where the business can take off.
Absolutely. But I'm going to combine that with trusted networks, because as a CMO I want to hang out with other CMOs that have similar problems, similar issues. And I'd kind of like to hang out with some similar size companies, quite frankly. So if you're a $1 billion company, I like to hang out with $1 billion companies. And so that's what you tend to see. You find these tribes, and then the tribes find their clan, So you'll see us organize in councils, or what we might call masterminds, but let's call them peer-to-peer council. So I can get together by role, by size, by geography, or by industry or interest, or problem. And so what you start to see is that you might form a network here for this one, and then a network for this one, depending on what your problem is. When I was the chief marketing officer at Kodak, I used to pay $50,000 a year to meet twice or three times a year with other CMOs of other Fortune 100 companies. Why? Because we had similar problems. We had similar opportunities. And, when someone calls me and says, "Hey, Jeff, tell me how to get out of NASCAR. I'm paying $28 million a year in a licensing fee," I know how to do that. Why? Because I've done that. I've been there before, right? And so that connection for that in a trusted network, because you said this so much, in a digital world, it's all changed. And COVID helped change that, because days became weeks, weeks became months, and months became years. And it all accelerated for us. And so now we're in this new world of how people find us, the way they find us, the way that we sell to each other. And being in that trusted network is very critical. And then being able to have the content out there so that I can see for myself and see that it's real, because that's the key piece, is that it's real. It's trustworthy kind of content, and it's transparent in the way that we approach it. And that's what people are looking for. They don't want to nobody wakes up every morning and says, I can't wait to be stupid and make the wrong decisions, right? So what they want to do is be with other people and be around people and products they trust. And so that's what you have to do today.
So there's an element there of belonging, being around people that are like you. I like this word trust that you use. Another word that's popping into my mind is the word relatability. So talking with people that have been through the same things that you've been through. If you've got a problem that you're facing right now, do you want to discuss it with your barber down the road, or do you want to discuss it with someone that's been through that problem before? Even if they failed, I'm going to say that might have something often.
Oh, absolutely. You're going to fail. Let's be clear. Yeah, you know this, Mick, been in business like you have. You're going to fail. It's not about failing fast, it's about winning fast. In today's world, it's about speed to the lead, speed to close, speed to satisfaction as much as possible, because people want that instant gratification. And that's okay. And that's just the nature of the way it is, the way that we buy. But yeah, you have to have that trusted individual. Now, a lot of times we get into these meetings, or we get into the discussions, and there's a difference between advice and counsel. Advice is usually given to people by people who have never done it before. Counsel is given to people by trusted executives, in our network, for instance, or maybe counsel by your mother or your father or your grandfather or your grandfather by people who have done it before. There's a big difference. And that's what is unique about an organization like our C-Suite network, is that you're filled with people who can give you counsel. They've done that, been that. And so when someone comes, say, in one of our, like our thought council or in our women's leadership council or our women's coaches council, and they say, I have this issue, here's my ask, I need help with this, then 30, 40 people can provide counsel and said, well, Mick, here's how I did that. Here's how this happened to me. Here's the software we use. Here is the path. Here's how we budget. Here's how we prioritize, right? And not by someone who says, you know, an 18-year-old or 19-year-old who says they're a life coach and they're 19 years old. Let's be clear. At 19, you're a teen coach, not a life coach. And so I want to be around people who have been there, done that over and over and over again, so that, you know, then I can get that education, that motivation, that inspiration, because in the end, I'm striving towards monetization as a business. That's how we keep score, you know, customer satisfaction. Let's throw all those things in there as well. But, you know, to get the monetization, you got to keep customers happy and they got to have great satisfaction. So to do that, that's where we got to go.
So I think we've already got a clear call to action here, Jeff, and that is this thing about advice versus counsel. And my call to action for the audience right now is to think about who you're surrounding yourself with and be honest with yourself. We actually don't want advice. We don't take advice. We don't really listen to advice. When we talk to a friend or whatever, they might tell us a few things, but in reality, do we ever really follow someone's advice? But what we do follow is someone's counsel. And this is a key distinction that Jeff is making here. If someone is coming to us from a position of trust, from a position of credibility, from a position that they've been there before, there's a good chance that we're going to listen to their counsel and we're going to listen to it judiciously, and we're then going to most likely interpret what they're saying and apply it to our circumstances. So think about who you're surrounding yourself with, and are you surrounding yourself with the people that can truly help you with the problems that you're serving today, or are you just surrounding yourself with people that are just giving you advice that you're not even going to take anyway? So that's a great takeaway already, Jeff. The next thing I want to talk about is the word contribute, right? So far we've got this community, and I can see the benefit of people taking from the community, but I'm sure most people are wanting to contribute back to the community. And the other word that you've already used is the word content, and I've heard you use the word content is king before, but there's going to be many people in the audience that have got limiting beliefs around this, going, you know, who am I to create content? Who am I to say I'm a thought leader? What advice can you give to people to dive into the content pool and get started with generating content in their field?
Let's take your first question first about the giving part, because you said the taking part. And the most important piece is the giving part. And in order to give, if you give, and when you come into the communities and you're in a trusted environment with each other, the more you give, the more you get. Now, that's not just from an intrinsic value of makes you feel better, but trust me, the more you give to other people, the more they're going to give back to you. And that is always the case. And that's the premise of our entire C-Suite network. And so when someone shows up and we introduce each other, the first thing we do is we tell people, or we ask people, what is your give? Tell everybody your give. So when you come on our digital events or you come to an event, come with a give. Like, for instance, we have a hero group, our hero club, and that's for CEOs that believe in certain kinds of values. And I'm sure we're going to get into that a little bit later, but they sign pledges that say they're basically not going to be assholes. They're going to put people above profits. They're going to operate their companies with great value. And we'll have people and we'll say, well, what can I give? And there'll be a CEO and goes, well, I run a business that I remember this exactly. He goes, I run a business as software company that provides software to golf courses. Now, in our group of CEOs, there's nobody there that owns golf courses. And he's sitting there going, what can I give? Well, he realized in the meeting that he's an expert at UI and user interfaces. And so he could go to every other CEO and say, I can give to you not just a discount to get in the golf course because I got this buddy over here that owns it, but what I can do is I can review your UI and give you advice because I have this expert team. So by him giving this, then he got other business advice from other people. So the gives keep giving. When you show up in a group with a network of people and there's 40 people in the room, you're going to walk out of there with 40, 50, 60 gives from other people, introductions and so forth. And then what does that make you want to do? You want to go do the same. So if you give, other people will give back. So that's really critical. Now, the other piece was on the content. Listen, everyone that's listening right now, you are an expert in something. You are great at something. And so why not differentiate that from, just saying, I don't know. You certainly know something of value that you can do. Just like I just gave you the example. Here was a CEO of a very successful software company who says, I can't give anything to give, until it dawned on him, hey, I'm an expert at this. This is really what I do. To take my generality away. And now specifically, I can help anyone with this. If you have this issue, I will spend an hour with you, 2 hours with you. Well, what usually happens from that give is you also get something back. So each of us has an expert. My grandmother, God bless her soul, was a housekeeper and a cleaner, but she had so much other expertise that I could only, in life, right? And in cleaning and lots of other things that she could garner. And she was a bright and beautiful woman. So why can't we all have that? And we all do. So, so if you're listening to those little voices in your head, stop, okay? Because listen to this voice right now that says you have it and there's something there.
I love it. So start with giving. Make sure that you're looking left and right, because you do have something to give, and it may not be instantly obvious to you, but have a look left and right.
And it's counsel too. Mick, it's counsel. It's not advice. Advice is that the stove is hot. The stove's hot. That's advice. The counsel is, I wouldn't touch that stove because when I touched it like that, I burned my hand, right? So there's a big difference. And so all of us have life experiences. There's the old story about they let everybody go in a company and then they couldn't turn on the valve at the factory, and they finally called the one guy and he came over and he turned on the valve, and he said, that'll be $60,000. What do you mean? You just turned on the valve. He said, I knew how to turn the valve on. So, and I knew where it was, and the rest of you didn't. So there's lots of great counsel and knowledge that's out there that any of us can do. And it doesn't make a difference who you are or what you are in the organization. We all have that.
And it's absolutely true that when we start with giving, we always get more back. So if we start from a point of service, you're always going to have people that want to help you because you help them. And that's what makes the world go around. Now, Jeff, I want to get to Hero Factor. This was one that really caught my attention. What inspired you to write that book in particular?
Well, it came about over a little bit of a period of time. And obviously, if we're all looking around right now, we all know that we've got a lot of chaos in politics, chaos in leadership, chaos in a little bit of business. And I really, truly believe that. I think we're going through a very volatile period in human history again. We see these in cycles, and I think we're doing that again. And it really gets back to true values. And how it came about was there was a gentleman by the name of Rob Bryan. Rob sold his company back in 1996, I think, or 2004. I can't remember, to bear with me on my memory. I'm getting older, so I don't always remember the exact dates, but I do remember that when he sold his business, he sold it for $24.6 billion. Okay. And it was Ascent Communications. And he sold it to Lucent Technology. And when he sold the company, he decided to give a portion of the company to all the employees. Now, that wasn't written down anywhere. It's just that he and his wife, who were co-owners of the company, along with a few other people, they decided that's the right thing to do. And so that day, they set a record for creating the single largest number of millionaires ever created in one day. It's never been surpassed. Then another big transaction, if you remember, is LinkedIn. When LinkedIn sold for $26 billion to Microsoft, and that was in 2016. So here it was, he sold the company, and all these people started coming up to him saying, Mr. Ryan, I'm the night watchman, and my mother-in-law has cancer, and she has no health insurance, and I'm going to pay for the operation. We're going to save her life. You're my hero. Or the janitor came up to him and said, to Harry, his wife, she was chief legal officer at the time, said, Mrs. Ryan, you don't know me, but I can send my kids to college. You're my hero. And they didn't think anything like being heroes. So, but they did say, what could we do where we could replicate this? And so they created a mastermind group, a council, a peer council of some CEOs, about 27 of them. And they started having people go through a little bit of a gathering from time to time and do what masterminds do. And that is to help lay out counsel and provide advice and counsel and assistance and everything and direction and everything the way that they wanted to go. But they could never do it at scale. And so finally, Rob tracked me down one day and said, give me $1. And I gave him $1. I had no idea what I thought, well, what's a billionaire need $1 for? But I thought maybe he needs a soda or something. I just stepped off the stage at the Rocky Mountain Economics Summit where I was just doing commentary, took my earpiece off, stepped off the stage, and here's Rob Bryan in my face. And I'd been avoiding him, Mick, because I thought he was raising money for Mitt Romney for president or something like that. And so I thought he just wanted a contribution or something. No, but he came over, stuck a finger in my face, said, give me $1. I reached in my pocket, gave him $1, and he said, you just bought the Hero Club, which I said, hey, what is the Hero Club? And so the next day I'm met with him. He started telling me more about it. I really liked it. And then I got to thinking, I took a couple of days off, went into you would call it the Outback. I call it Yellowstone. And I went fly fishing. And as I was driving home, I thought, wow, what a great opportunity to have a group of CEOs that believe in values so deeply that they put people above profits. Now, let me think about what these businesses are like. And I got to thinking more and more, because here I am out in the Outback, out in the middle of nowhere, fly fishing with grizzly bears and bison and thermal geo geysers and everything. And as I was driving back, going 4 hours there and 4 hours back every single day for a couple of days, I started writing out what I call the pledge. And that is a pledge for CEOs to say that they'll put people above profits and they basically won't be assholes. And that's what we started. And so what we found by studying these companies that do this is that they gross more money than their competitors. They make more money than almost anyone. They have employees who are more engaged, where 53% of employees today aren't even engaged in the company. They have customers who are happier. They have vendors who want to do business with them. And when they walk through the town, everybody points at them and goes, there goes a hero business leader, because they're the people that pay for the little league, football teams and sponsor the symphony and do all the things right because they believe it to be right for the right reasons, not because it's a business decision. All right. And then you can start to look at these companies and you can see that they have, not only do they have high values systems, but they have high operational principles and outcomes as well, as opposed to asshat companies or wannabes or do-gooders or bottom line companies, which, we all know who those are, like the Walmarts of the world, the GEs. Great. Listen, let's be clear. They're good companies, right? But they're all about the bottom line and not about the values. Because if they choose to diversity, if they choose to be a green company, it's because it's more of a bottom line decision than it is a value-based decision. And nothing wrong with that. That's just the way it is. But we find that hero companies, great leaders, transform organizations if they create winning cultures. And that's what it's all about.
All right, so I want to unpack a few things there, and I'm going out on a limb on some of them, Jeff, so correct me on anything.
Hey, I do that all the time. So
correct me on anything where I go too far off the limb, if you like. So the first thing I'm going to say is I'm going to say that I don't think any of these CEOs set out to be a hero. All right, so...
Amen, brother. Like I said, nobody wakes up to be stupid. I don't think no one wakes up and says, I'm a hero. And almost 100% of the time, because nothing's ever 100%, right? But almost 100%, every one of those folks would say they're not a hero. They might run a hero organization because they've got heroes working for them. They've got great people working for them, right? But it's more about the aspect of the values, and we just have to put a name or a moniker on it. That's it. That's all it is.
Now, you said about great people working for you. Let's start with that one. So the first thing I'm taking away from what you're saying is that when you are clear about your values, that we are going to put people before profits, that we're not going to be assholes. That can be two really simple ones right there, that you start attracting people around you that believe in the things that you believe. And that's how you attract a great crowd. Would you say that's the first ingredient?
Absolutely. Go look at Wall Street companies, aggressive, hard-hitting companies that don't have values. They have killers. They have people who are nothing but karish, which is the Hebrew word for sharks, right? I mean, that's what they, if you look at, and I don't want to name names, but you know what I'm talking about. If you've ever watched the movie Greed, the Gordon Grekos of the world, they surround themselves with that. And so that's who they are. The Bernie Madoffs of the world or whatever it might be, that's what they tend to do. So, and that's just their way of doing it. I choose to not operate that way. I don't want that. I don't want that around my life, right? Now, it doesn't mean that sometimes I can't take on those same attributes. I mean, I can still have great values and still be a shark. In fact, that's my nickname is Karish by the most Israeli companies, because I'm known to be a very aggressive, but very fair and very, very forthright, transparent and everything else. But I stick to real great values that I just won't stomp on anyone or overstep certain things. But without question, I think that's a key thing in terms of you attract what you want and you attract what you build. And if you build that, and that doesn't mean that everybody on your team is perfect. I always believe a third of them get it right away, a third eventually get it, and a third never do. Jack Welch always said, take the bottom 20 and just keep, get rid of the bottom 20 every year and you keep improving your lot. But I think if you have values, if you have a compass for people to follow and they get it and they know it and you still that, it becomes part of their DNA. And to me, mood is a big piece of that too, Mick. But you got to have the mood. Culture is something that takes a time, but if you have a right attitude, the right mood, the right cadence, the energy of that you're leading that, you might not be perfect, but you're headed that way. People get it and they want to go with you.
All right, so we've got a compass. I'm going to say clarity of compass and clarity of direction. We're setting the mood, we're setting the cadence, and the people that understand it, the people that just get it, they're going to join us. And when they join us, we start multiplying our impact on the world, is what I'm taking away there. So,
and the language becomes the language of the group, right? It becomes that tribe. It becomes the language. It becomes our own dialect of way we speak and how we operate. And, all that becomes part of it, which is just great.
Right. So first of all, we've attracted great people around us. Then this whole people before profits and the culture of not being arseholes. I love this. Now what we're going to drive is we're going to drive two things is what I'm taking away, Jeff. One is loyalty, incredible loyalty when you put people before profits. And secondly, I think what we're going to do is we're going to tap into discretionary effort. We're going to tap into it. Everyone in the audience knows, right? Everyone's worked for an arsehole sometime in their life. Do you really put in the extra mile? Maybe sometimes to just show them that you can, but really you don't put in that discretionary effort when you're working for someone that you don't respect. But when you're working for someone that you deeply respect, that you believe in the mission and the compass, that you believe in what the company's doing and that you believe in the values of the company, you start tapping into discretionary effort. And I think that is the biggest discriminator in business today, is whether discretionary effort is channeled in the right direction or whether it's just dissipating everywhere. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, amen, brother. It's like a great meal. And we all had a great meal, right? It's to die for. So why wouldn't we have the same thing with our jobs or our own family? Our family, we would die for, right? We would do, most of our family. All have that uncle or aunt that we don't, but anyway, but you get where I'm going. And why wouldn't we want the same thing in the rest of it, especially in something that we're going to spend most of our time with, which we spend more of our time at work than we spend with anything else in our life. So that experience in time should be at the forefront. A good friend of mine, of course, passed, Stephen Covey from many years ago, used to talk about 7 habits of highly successful people. Now, one of the things he said, you have to have 4 things in your life. You have to have a balance of spiritual, friends, your family, and your work. And, and if we think about most of the other things, we got our head together on most of those. We don't always have our head together on the work side. And so if you put yourself in an organization that's putting, not profit over people, we find that that's what will make the business successful. I mean, then you're going to, as you said, go that extra mile. It's to die for. And, I want people to feel as good as I do. I go to bed at night hoping I'll hurry up and sleep so I can get going the next morning. That's my day. And I want everybody else to feel the same way. And so, I was recently been on the board for this one company. We just started a new media company for Hispanic news. First of its kind in the world. No one ever had a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week Hispanic news network. So we're starting it. TV, podcast, radio, everything. And, I bring that hero mentality into the office because I was running sales and marketing as we were getting it started because nobody else could do it. So, the CEO goes, "Hey, Jeff," the chairman of the company goes, "You're on the board. Would you come and help me do this?" Absolutely. I believe in it. And, and I loved it that I instilled that into that marketing team to where the young Turks, the young guys and gals were trying to beat me into the office every day because I come in early because I like that early time. I can get a couple hours worth of work done. And, lo and behold, they started monitoring me and checking, and they just thrived on beating me by, pulling into that office before I did, or being at the desk before I walked up, because we were all sharing one big room. Here I am, I bought and sold hundreds of businesses and billions of dollars, but yet I'm still coming in a room and sharing folding tables with a bunch of young guys and gals. And that's what you love to see. I mean, that to me is just, it's so exciting.
What role now is connection to purpose, right? So we've started with connection to values, which I think was really important. But listening to you say that you go to bed at night, can't wait for the next day because you're going to jump out of bed because you're going to dive into the deep end and go again. To me, that must be connected to purpose and because you believe in the mission. And the people that you're talking about that are then joining you on that mission and purpose, they must feel connected to it as well. Tell me more about that.
Well, then it really comes down to what conditions of satisfaction are you driving? I mean, we all come down to mission and vision, and then that drives goals. Goals drive objectives. Objectives drive tactics, right? Which all plays into the strategy. But really, it's about first of all, we have to get our own conditions of satisfaction. So like, what are your personal conditions of satisfaction? And then if we're working together, Mick, then you and I are focusing on what are our mutual conditions of satisfaction, which are related to that mission, vision, goals, and then objectives and tactics and everything else that has to occur, the activities that that lead us there, the steps, because most of us focus on the steps when really I like to get, hey, where are we going? What problem are we trying to solve first? Once we get that down, we all have alignment. That's where we're going. So if we're going to go to point A to point B, usually I always strive, let's figure out point C so that we can, really drag everybody past B as fast as we can, but it's about that, so, first for me, my own mutual conditions of satisfaction, or my own personal ones are, I want to build wealth for me and my family. That, I don't want my family to grow up like I did and, living in a trailer park outside the Air Force Base, and shopping at Sears. Not that there's anything wrong with any of that, but I just wanted a better life for me, my family, and then my grandchildren, my children and my grandchildren. Then the next thing I want to do is and by the way, making money is that's how we keep score. And then the second thing that I want to focus in on is then I want to learn new things. I love learning. I'm constantly learning, constantly reading, constantly watching, live in a constant state of awareness, meaning I don't know what I'm aware of. Okay. So there's certain things I kind of know, but I'm always glad to be surprised. And then the third thing for me, it's got to be fun. If it's not fun, could like I said, we're going to say the asshole word again, but I don't want to work with assholes. I don't want to work with people who are difficult. I don't want drama around my freaking life. I'm done with that stuff. And so those are my three factors. Now I can kind of live without one for a while, but I can't live without two, and I sure ain't not going to live without three. And I'm going to be out of it pretty quick. And I have to see a path toward getting all three, or it's not on my conditions of satisfaction. So I'm out. And the second I see that, I'm out.
So what I'm taking here is these conditions of satisfaction. So what am I looking for? I'm looking for some kind of purpose. I'm looking for some kind of problem that we're solving. I'm looking for what am I going to enjoy? For you like learning, you like fun. You're looking for what am I going to enjoy in this workplace that I'm spending up to 1/3 of my life, right? And then if you then coincide with other people where those values and that condition of satisfaction coincides, before you know it, you might be on the path towards something magical. And then if that purpose can coincide and you can agree on what the problem is, I think that's a fast track there, right? If you can get a group of people together, the first thing you can do is agree on what problem you're trying to solve. You're halfway there already. Then you can all start rowing in the same direction. You can all start enjoying your work because you've got shared values about what your conditions of satisfaction are. And all of a sudden you're starting to build something magical. How does that sit with you?
Absolutely. In fact, but it's even very simple, Mick. It's even starting meetings with what's our purpose of the meeting, right? I mean, to understand conditions of satisfaction. So you understand what we're all trying, because you can make meeting. If it's an hour, it will last an hour, unless you start saying things like, what is it we're trying to get done with the meeting? What does I think you set that right from the beginning before we even turned on the microphone. You said, hey, Jeff, what's success look like for you today? And I thought that was your very first question, but you were just saying, hey, what can I help you get out of the interview, right? Which is like, you don't hear that very often, conversations, which is refreshing, right? Because now you're trying to take care of me. You're trying to serve me. And I think I said back to you, hey, I'm just here to make a great interview for you, right? Because that was my job for today. But of course, with that, I'll get what I need. I'm like Henry Kissinger showing up for a press conference in the 70s. What questions do you have for my answers? So, I get that. But I'll even get down to the simplest piece of like, let's start a meeting with what are the purpose here today? Even with my wife, what do we, my wife and I work off list kind of thing. Like, what are we going to do today and the weekends? Like, what are we? Oh, we got to mow the back 40. We got to do this. We got to plant some trees. We got to, I want to be clear what's on that list because she likes to sneak other things on that list when I'm not looking. So, and I know I'm never going to please her. So I want to please her. So I know, and then I've got my time for my own scotch and relaxation in the evening or whatever.
All right. Now, we danced around something before that I didn't get a chance to ask, and I want to come back to it because I think there's some nuance here I want to unpack. You speak about winning cultures, and I definitely want to know about your definition of a winning culture. But then you spoke about two things. You spoke about killers. You spoke about killers on Wall Street, and then you spoke about yourself and said, well, you can be shark-like yourself, and you can be aggressive, but you can be aggressive in a way that is still congruent with your values. You didn't use those exact words, but it was pretty close to that. Where do we draw the line when we're making a winning culture? Where do we draw the line between shark tank as in killer shark versus aggressive shark because we're aggressive towards the purpose, but we're not doing away with our values? How do you balance that?
Well, there's a great movie years ago. I just thought of this as you were saying it. So how can you have one without, and then not have the other? And does it cross the line? And that's the key, is where it crosses the line. And that's where it comes into values. There's a great movie that is called A Few Good Men. Tom Cruise and who is it? What's his name? Jack Nicholson's in the movie. And if you remember that line, there was a whole thing in the courtroom in the middle of it. You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. While you might find my appearance and physical nature grotesque, I think it was something along those lines, if I remember. We need people like that. But we also want people who won't, wantonly kill other people. We want people who won't cross the line into what we consider to be morally right or, in our own set of values. And that's the difference, right? So I want a military force. I want police. I want these things. I want that protection. And I want them to be the most aggressive sons of a bitches as possible. But I also want them to come back to their families and love their families, take care of their daughters and their sons and everything else. So that's the difference, is the values that they have. When I talk about those agreed on values, the only value that most of those folks have is money. I get a good example on my podcast, which is All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett, which is also a TV show and a podcast on C-Suite Radio and C-Suite TV. I interviewed the guy that wrote the book, he used to have the Twitter account Overheard on Goldman Sachs. I don't know if you remember that, but it was this snarky kind of tweet every day of the things you would hear on the elevator. And they were just like horrific things that people would say that were degrading about other people and things and companies and so forth. And I had the guy on my show and he was telling me about women being tethered goats. Now, if you remember the movie Jurassic Park, almost 35 years, I think it's 30 years ago, 35 years ago, it's a celebration this week or month. And they had a tethered goat that they fed to the T-Rex. And he was basically saying, hey, in the financial markets, we use women as like tethered goats to attract the clients and keep them happy and use them. And I said, dude, what did you just say? And this was an interview. Now, I was in New York City. He wasn't in the studio. It was that time I was at CBS and he was downtown. And I said, would you repeat that? And he said it again. I said, how dare you? And I go, don't you have daughters? And he said, yes, I do. How could you say something like that and have a daughter? I said, this is exactly what I said. I said, dude, if you were here right now, I'd punch you in the throat. That's how mad you make me. And I said, I would rarely go to physical violence, but you make me want to punch you. And he goes, you don't understand. That's the market. I said, no, you don't understand. You're grotesque. You have no values, and so forth and so on. And that's the difference. I will do everything within the rule of law, within the rule of ethics, within everything, and push every edge because you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall, right? And you might not always like marketers or salespeople, but you're going to like the results based on the fact that we'll do it the right way, right? And we'll use every tool and technique. And that's what we should do. And so therein lies the difference between the two. And we need those. And you need everybody. You need all of those things to make up the tribe, all those things to make up the community, all those things. You want the best CFO. You don't want somebody who's going to cook the books, but you want to know somebody who's looking for somebody who's cooking the books, right? Or who might cross those lines and do those things. And that's not to say that you suspect everybody you run into of cooking the books, right? But you got to set up rules, guidelines, and things like that. And that you truly, truly want in your business. In your life, Mick, I don't know if you're married, but I got a wife. She's the opposite of me. I'm 6'3", 240 pounds. She's 5'1", 105 pounds, little tiny thing, scares the living crap out of me all the time. And yet she holds me in check. I remember one time I was saying something and my daughter didn't like it. My adult daughter didn't like it. And she said, stop talking to mom about that. I said, don't you stick up for your mom. She can defend herself. She'll kick my ass, right? And so we all have checks and balances. We all have to have those things. It's all great to have. And that's what it should be about.
So that's, once again, surrounding ourselves with great people and great people that share our values, right? And they might be sharp, they might have an edge, but they know where the boundaries are, and the boundaries are those values. And the example that you gave before, which was horrendous, by the way, I think there's also an element there of not allowing values and that boundary to erode over time, right? So when you said, but you don't understand that's how the market works, well, that's what happens when we tolerate things that are eroding that values, eroding that boundary. And over time, our tolerance of it becomes acceptance, and acceptance becomes endorsement. And before you know it, it's just, oh, you don't understand. That's how it is. And it's inaction that leads to this being acceptable behavior, and it's not acceptable. How does that sit with you?
And I think that's in everything that we do. I mean, I can remember one time I'm traveling with my young son, who's now the chief marketing officer of our company and has 2 children of his own. And when he was younger, it was soon after 9/11, and they were doing certain things in the way that they were conducting the search. And I objected. I said, no. And they said, well, you don't know. We're going to do it. And no, I know my rights. And no, you're not. And this isn't going to happen. And it got very confrontational. Now I, stood my ground about certain things because that was against what I considered to be a right way or the way I wanted to be treated. And my opinion is that we need to confront bad behavior. And I sometimes I will get myself into trouble because I will confront bad behavior. I won't allow someone to cross that line when it comes to my own values and morals and so forth. Now, that could be that I'll just walk away from the opportunity. Like, no, I don't want to do business with you. Well, Mr. Hayzlett, we're going to pay you $1 million or whatever it might be. Well, nope, not interested. Why? Well, because I don't like you, or I don't like what you represent or how you represent. There's certain companies I won't work with or endorse or do other things because I just don't believe them. There are other ones I'll do for free because I just love what they do and how they do it. And by the way, usually those gives result in a get, almost always, where I talk about things that I really love, like United Airlines does a great job, has done a great job. Well, my Now TV show is the longest standing running show on their airline, and they've done great things. I love Scotch, so I talk about great Scotch brands. I get free Scotch. I talk about a Cadillac. They give me a Cadillac, so forth and so on. Or Toomey luggage is another one. Someone said how much they pay us. Not one thing, but I love great companies and that do great things. And you should, there's nothing wrong with, shouting about those.
All right. So on the winning culture, we've discussed about values. We've discussed about boundaries, and I'll double down on that and say that we do get the behavior that we tolerate, and don't underestimate how insidious it can be. Like, so when you got someone in your business that is behaving in a way that's outside that boundary, don't forget the impact that it's not just having on that individual, it's having an impact on everyone around them. I want to come back to the winning culture. What other tips do you have for people in the audience about what they can do to craft their own winning culture in their businesses?
Well, you have to pick a side. One of the things we kind of mentioned the Trump thing earlier on. Trump has been very divisive in the United States. And I actually wrote, this was back in 2000, I don't know what year it was. I should look up when I wrote the book, the last time I wrote the book, but it was right after the election, the first election. And so when I wrote this book, 2018, for Entrepreneur magazine, I said Trump was a good thing. Now, I got all kinds of letters and so forth. Now, not because I believed in Trump, but because he made you pick a side, right? He made you pick a side. That's all that counts. I think that's important for people to have, in that it finally was getting to a point where we were just letting things go by and go by. Well, look what we got. And so when you let things go by and go by, they degrade. And then pretty soon, the road falls down, the bridge breaks, the airplanes don't fly, whatever it is, things start to disintegrate. And so that's why it's important for us to pick sides. You might not, now in the United States, we've got a thing called Chick-fil-A. And in Chick-fil-A, that company is run by Truett Cathy. And so that gentleman has a belief that he should not be open on Sunday, that's the Lord's day. And so even though I like a good chicken sandwich, you can't get a Chick-fil-A sandwich on Sunday. He also believes that he believes or doesn't believe in gay marriages, which I typically look at him and think, what are you, nuts? That doesn't seem human to me, but he's entitled to his own belief. He picks sides. Well, you can decide to whether you want to do business with him or not based upon that, or you will say, you know what, for almost all the other great things that this person does and what he does for his community and what he does for his people, because quite frankly, you can't go in and buy a Chick-fil-A. You have to work as a manager at Chick-fil-A, work your way up, and then he'll sell you one, right? So there's some good things and some, as like most things in life, there's not so good things. And you've got to decide what that line is. But you know what? They make you pick a side. And I think that's important. Let's take Starbucks, for example. Starbucks is another great example of that. They had 2 black gentlemen walk into the store and sit down and started doing work. And the manager came over to him and said, if you're not going to buy some coffee, get out. Well, we're going to buy some coffee. We're going to have some people come over. We're having a meeting. No, you got to buy it now or get out. And they kicked them out. And actually not only kicked them out, had them arrested for trespassing. Well, if you know anything about Starbucks, Starbucks isn't about that. You can go into a Starbucks anywhere in the world and sit there for 8 hours, not buy one thing. But yet these gentlemen were black. They were targeted and so forth and so on. You could say they were picked out, not picked out, but the facts are the facts, right? I don't see anybody else getting arrested for trespassing except for these two black gentlemen in Philadelphia. What did Starbucks do? They shut down the entire company for hours, for an entire day, to retrain everybody about who they really were. Starbucks isn't a coffee company. Starbucks will tell you we're a community center. We're a place for community to gather and come together in a place place for gathering. That's it. And oh, by the way, we just happen to sell coffee. We just happen to sell some prepackaged muffins. We happen to sell a little juice, some water. Oh, and we even sell music now. So that's what they have become. So what did they do? They picked a side. And you can like that or not like that, but that's what I think is important for us, is that you've got to pick sides.
The key word that's coming to my mind right now, Jeff, is the word congruence. And I think this is a missing factor in many businesses. And this is I'm sure you've seen this before as well. This is where you have a company who's got values, or if you ask them, have you got values, they'll point to some plaque on the wall and say, oh, yeah, there are our values. Values are not what's written on the plaque on the wall. The values are what is evident in the behavior. And what you just described with Starbucks is the very embodiment of living their values. It's living their values, that when they had to make a tough decision, that the tough decision was obvious to them that this was what they were going to do.
Millions and millions of dollars, tens of millions, hundreds of millions. I don't know what it cost them, but when they did that, I mean, most C-suite executives like myself that are Fortune 100 company are going, holy crap, you're doing what? Can you imagine that? The only time I saw that one time was I was in a small software company, a company that we actually bought out of Australia, which was ColorStar, was in the U.S. And then I can't remember the name of the company in Australia. But anyway, we rolled it up to a company called Colorbus. And we're at a company-wide meeting. And the CEO said one of our values is that if you see something wrong, you can fix it. You make that decision. And one of the employees, on the line, because we made this what was called a raster image processor. Basically, you need software, or back then you needed a computer, that if you have a printer talking to a computer, you needed a device to talk to each other. Like one spoke French, one spoke German, you need an interpreter. We sold the interpreter. Now all that's done with software. But back then you used to have to buy this computer, and we made that computer or that device that would interpret between the two. And that employee said, you mean if there's something wrong on the line, I can shut it down? If you mean if I need to get this to a customer, I could rent a helicopter? And the CEO thought for a minute. He said, yes. And then, like a month went by and somebody tested that theory. And in the last day of the month, when we're trying to make everything go out the door, something wasn't right and somebody shut it down. Cost us a lot of money, cost us upset customers. But what we did was we got on the phone, we called them and said, hey, here's what's going on. We didn't want to just ship you something that didn't work. We didn't want to do this. We didn't want to ship you with this and you didn't get the dongle to run it or the cable to run it, right? We just didn't have that, or whatever. Wow. I mean, that to me, I very rarely have ever seen that in my entire life. You see companies who say, hey, no, we're going to operate with our guys. That's drinking the Kool-Aid, brother. That's saying, hey, you're drinking the champagne, whatever you want. It's because the HR people get mad when I say drink the Kool-Aid. But, it's getting on the wagon. It's getting on the, jumping on the bandwagon with everybody and saying, we're going to play the same tune. And I mean, that's amazing to have happen. And those are magical moments. And if you can string those together, that's a hell of a company.
It's a great way to crescendo the interview, because there's congruence with values, and it's values in action now. It's values in action. It's not rhetoric. It's not just a bunch of words. It's values in action that is then going to, and the transparency that you're talking about, where you're telling people, say, hey, we're doing this and here's why. That is what is going to build trust. It's going to build trust, and it's going to build loyalty. It's going to build trust and loyalty with your staff. It's going to build trust and loyalty with your customers. And that's why it works. That's why it works, because people will then believe in you and they'll trust you with their future business. Those people that are investing themselves, their own time, up to 1/3 of their life spent in your business, they're investing themselves in you. They need to trust and believe in you. Your customers are buying your product or service. They need to trust and believe in you. And how you do it is you're clear about your values and your actions match what you say your values are. I think that sums up our discussion today.
Yeah, formula for success right there. That's it.
All right. Brilliant, Jeff. I've absolutely adored our discussion today. I want to take us now to our rapid round. These are the same 4 questions that we ask all of our guests. All right. So first question, what's the one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
Go faster, bigger and faster. It's my 3rd book, Think Big, Act Bigger. I would have done that a lot faster and not wait for people to ask permission. Just go. Yeah, brilliant. All right. What's your favorite book? Oh, probably How to Win Friends and Influence People. I read it every single year. And, and books like that. I mean, those are the kind of things that I read all the time. I'm in the process of like 4 books a week. Brilliant. And what's your favorite quote? Oh, it's Shakespeare. Cry havoc, let slip the dogs of war. So cry havoc, let slip the dogs of war. So that's my favorite quote.
Very good. Now, for this one, you could probably take the entire hour to answer this question. How do people find you? And the reason why I say that is because you are everywhere. But I'm sure people are interested in C-Suite. They're interested in you personally. They're interested in your books. What's the best resource for them to go to if they want to know more?
Just, reach me at jeff@hayzlett.com, HAYZLETT.com. You can reach out C-Suite, C-Suite-Network.com. You can find me on social media. If you DM me on social media, I'll be the one responding back. Even though I got like 1 million followers across the whole platform, all the platforms, I still get back to everybody. And everybody says, is this you or is this some assistant? No, it's usually me. It's usually me.
All right, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Jeff Hayzlett. I've absolutely adored this conversation. I've loved every moment of it. I can't wait to share this with the world and for everyone to enjoy this episode as well. I feel richer for having had this conversation. Thank you so much for your time and for your insights and wisdom today.
And thank you for making me think, which I love to do. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Leadership Project at mixbeers.com. A huge call out to Faris Sadek for his video editing of all of our video content, and to all of the team at TLP. Joanne Goes On, Gerald Calabo, and my amazing wife, Say Spears. I could not do this show without you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you interesting videos each and every week. And you can follow us on social, particularly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, in the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and join us on this journey as we learn together and lead together.